Urza
Urza,
is
hardly
just,
know her.
yeah. Urza, and actually this kind of segues me into, very nice, John. Thank you.
Sorry, continue.
Are you proud of that one?
Yes, I am actually.
Guys, we are back. It's your boys here on the MTG Thoughtcast, and today we're talking trinkets and tchotchkes. We're talking all things artifact decks today. We're talking how to build an artifact deck, why would you build an artifact deck, what do artifact decks do, all of that and so much more. We're going to dive into the nitty-gritty of all things Artifact Commander today. But before we do, I should tell you who I am. My name is Joseph. I'm one of your hosts here at the MTG Thoughtcast. And across the screen, or somewhere across your ears, is my brother, your pal, John. John, how are you feeling today? Are you ready to talk about some artifacts?
I'm the real artifact that needs to be in a museum.
Yeah, this is where I'd put my John artifact if I had one.
Hello, everybody's favorite commander color, mono brown.
Yeah, we're talking a lot of gray today. To be fair, we're talking brown, we're talking gray. It's funny because we've been spending some time going through sort of underrated picks in different colors, and today we'll be almost exclusively talking about colorless things. So I don't think we'll get to the underrated colors or underrated colorless cards quite yet in our underrated
No, not
series.
for a long while, no.
Exactly. So this is man, we're just talking like, I love artifact decks, and so this just kind of came up as a topic. I want to talk about something that I love, and that is artifacts. So that's what we're getting into a lot of today. But before we do, if you're looking for something to protect all of your artifacts, you should check out our friends over at Heavy Play. Their logo is gray, much like an artifact. It is our favorite gaming accessories. Our deck boxes, dice boxes, and playmats are all Heavy Play. They are beautifully made, excellently plastic welded, and then they all magnet together so you can take them anywhere you want to go. They're super portable, really high quality. Love those guys. If you want 10% off of your first order with Heavy Play, you can use code MTG Thoughtcast at checkout. That's on the screen here, or you can check the link down below in the description of whatever you're watching or listening to this on. It is heavyplay.com/MTG Thoughtcast for 10% off of your first order with them. If you're looking to build an artifact deck and you want some help with that, there's one place on the internet that you can go that's nice and concise for all of that, and that is the MTG Thoughtcast Discord. That's also linked down below. We have a brewery tab where you can post deck lists and get advice from us and the rest of the MTG Thoughtcast community about the decks that you're building. So jump on down over there. We'll play some Commander games together. It's going to be awesome. While you're down there, if you want to support the show,
go get some insight from the group of artificers.
Absolutely. It is a group of some artificers. There's definitely some artifact players in our pod down on the Discord.
Treasure enjoyers, we see you out there. We Absolutely. Know who you are.
Oh, we'll dive into treasures in a little bit here. While you're down there, if you want to be a treasure, you can click all of the little YouTube buttons down there. Likes, comments, and subscribes. Help us out. It's a totally free way to support the channel. Even if you don't use any of those things, just give them a try. Just this once. It helps the algorithm put these two guys here into your feeds more often. So if you want to see us and hear us talking a bit more, those are the easy and free ways to do it. Let's dive into the episode, shall we, John?
Yay, rocks.
Yes,
I love rocks.
Rocks. Yes.
It
was so funny. So I saw this topic come up as like people are searching for how to build an artifact deck. And I thought that there's none better to get on the case of that than us here on the MTG Thoughtcast. And I want to, before we dive into all of the things artifact decks, I want to know, like, what's your thoughts around artifact decks? It's such a broad topic. Do you play a lot of artifact decks? Do you consider any of your decks to be artifact decks?
I certainly, for one, I have like a deck that is just strictly, it is artifact in its focus. It's Sai Master Thopterist. His whole idea of you get value off of casting artifacts and cares about artifacts you have in play. But as a whole, as the sort of archetype is concerned, artifacts are the strongest cards in the game. Just straight up, we've used this metric before when talking about like how you can scale a power level of the card. Refer back to the power 9. How many of those?
You know what I mean? Are artifacts.
The power 9 is 6 artifacts and blue cards. So you set that as your metric of what are some of the game's most iconic and strongest types of cards. It's artifacts, and especially artifacts that make mana as well. It's not unprecedented to say that commander and your mana base that you build into the deck, these two things are inherently tied hand in hand. The amount of extra acceleration you can get when playing our favorite format is going to be a huge determining factor on how well your deck construction is. And artifacts, both as either mana ones or ones that help support the rest of your package, is very crucial to building a deck like that.
Right. Yeah, I think like when thinking of the question, like what is an artifact deck, it is almost a bit of a misnomer to me, where there's so many different things that can be considered an artifact deck. In my mind, an artifact deck is something that is both using artifacts as an engine and as a payoff. Because like you said, everything is artifacts. There's artifacts that produce mana. There's artifacts that have power toughness boxes. There's an artifact planeswalker. Like there's all of these things. And if you've got, 25% or more of your deck is these artifacts, or I would say if your commander says the word artifact on it anywhere, I think you could probably consider your deck to be an artifact deck. Like you were talking about with Sai, where he says when you play an art or when you cast an artifact.
Yeah, when you cast an artifact. Yep.
You make a Thopter, which is a 1/1 artifact token, and then you can sacrifice those artifacts to draw cards. So not only is he giving you payoff for casting your artifacts, so he wants you to put a ton of artifacts in your deck, he's also giving you a payoff to get rid of those and refill your hand to then play more artifacts and sacrifice them and play more artifacts and sacrifice. This is kind of how that works. So when I say that the deck is both an engine and a payoff, Sai is actually like an unbelievable example of that. That obviously is a mono blue artifact deck, which again becomes super easy because most artifacts are colorless. So the shell really comes down to who you're picking as your commander to helm what you're doing with these artifacts. So as we go through today's episode, I really want to talk about who you could pick to be your artifact commander, and then what some of the different strategies in artifacts are. And a lot of these are mix and match because Sai is, again, a great example, of course, from the Oracle himself, having the perfect example as we start the show.
Call me basic. Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, Sai both plays into, you want permanent artifacts, you want cards that are artifacts, but he also gives you artifact tokens. And these are the two main things that artifact decks do, is either play super hard into I'm casting artifacts from my hand, or I'm, recurring them from graveyard or whatever. This benefit to having permanent artifacts. Or you have token artifacts that are usually really powerful one-time effects. Everybody knows treasures are everywhere in the format right now, but you've also got clues, you've got food, you've got blood, you've got Thopters. Like this is two kind of distinct strategies, and Sai really bridges the gap between those. But let's just start by talking about...
Back in my day, we had gold, and we were happy with it.
Dude, and gold didn't require tapping to sack, right?
It did not. No,
it was beautiful. What's the inspired mono black commander that was a riff on Midas?
Makar, the gold cursed.
God, dude, he's so good. Untap, exile something, and make a gold. Perfect. He's so good. Yeah, let's just talk about some of the top artifact commanders. I think that will give us a good reference point for what your different artifacts can do, some different synergies that you could be building into an artifact shell. Top commander on EDH Rec, when you go under tags artifacts, is Urza Chief Artificer, which I have a strong love for. Urza Chief Artificer is an Esper deck, so it's white, blue, and black. He costs 3 white, blue, and black for a 4/5 human artificer, and he has this lovely, lovely ability called Affinity for Artifacts. We here at the show, at the MTG Thoughtcast, are big fans of Affinity for Artifacts, if not evidenced by the name of the show and the card that it references. So he's got Affinity for Artifacts, which is just this spell costs 1 less for each artifact creature. He's got sorry. Let me rephrase. He has Affinity for Artifact creatures. So he costs 1 less for each artifact creature you control. What I am referencing is Affinity for Artifacts, which is similar, which is cost 1 less for each artifact you control. There's a difference. What I would say Urza's trying to do is, this is in the creature beatdown battle cruiser artifact deck.
Go smash.
Go smash.
Mm-hmm.
He gives artifact creatures you control menace, and then at the beginning of your end step, he makes a construct, which is a 0/0 colorless construct that gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. So that includes itself, buffs them as they go. Urza came out in the Brothers War Commander decks, which were some of my favorite precons that have ever been printed. They were fully retro bordered. They featured brown artifacts as God intended, and they're perfect, dude. It makes a lot of sense that this is the most popular artifact deck because it is just pure battle cruiser, and I think that's one of the main strategies that you can go with if you're building an artifact deck is battle cruiser, because like we mentioned, artifacts are strong and they're colorless and they synergize super well together. One of the weaknesses, however, that you have playing an artifact deck is you're weak to artifact removal, which is also everywhere. One of the top played cards in red is what, John?
Vandal Blast.
Vandal Blast. We didn't even plan that, and he just knows it. Vandal Blast is destroy all artifacts you don't control. Playing an artifact deck, you are weak to that. You're weak to Collector Oof. You're weak to, you introduce a bunch of weaknesses. It's high risk, high reward playing an artifact deck. Urza rewards you for dumping your hand of artifact creatures super early. Your Ornithopters, your Memnites, all of these 0 mana artifact creatures that then gain menace as you play Urza, and then he continues to make these like constructs. But because Urza is not an artifact and he makes artifact creatures as he goes, he is not weak to Vandal Blast because you just continue to pop out these constructs as we go, and then he just rebuilds super fast. Also, like, artifacts are unbelievably recursive. There are so many cards that just loop artifacts from the graveyard. It is understandably one of the most popular commander strategies because Commander is a format of card advantage, and recursion is card advantage, which is sort of inherently built into artifact strategies.
There's also just kind of there's an air about it of like, it's just easy to play. You know, when it comes to trying to figure out what type of color, what type of strategy are you looking to go ahead and play, you start diving down into like colors, and then you start having to think about your mana production, the things that generate you mana as it goes. Like, are you going to have the right color at the right opportunity? You playing just like artifacts or whatever, you don't have to really worry about colors anymore. You just kind of need a number. If you're playing the colorless ones, I could say you obviously have to start considering when you have like artifacts that do have some color in them. But generally speaking, if you're just playing those ones that just need a generic or their colorless symbol or whatever, all you just care about is big number. Big number, make big mana, cast big things. That's just it reads easy. It's an easy game strategy. Yeah,
definitely. It's also like, I mean, it's a card type that has been around since alpha. So there is 35 years of sets worth of artifacts, both creatures and non-creatures, that synergize well together. So as you're digging through, one of the things that I wanted to bring up was that one of the easiest ways to determine what kind of an artifact build you want to do is based on your budget. There is an easy path to make a $50 artifact deck, and there is an easy path to make a $1,000 artifact deck. And they kind of build themselves as you go. So I do think that every commander bag should have an artifact strategy in it. It's a really fun deck to play. It is we could wax lyrical about how good artifact decks are, but I do think that everyone should play one at some point. I've had various iterations of artifact decks. My most recent one was a vehicles deck. which again used vehicles as my artifact of choice to synergize and create a strategy around. Again, though, you could argue that that's not an artifact deck, but it's a vehicles deck. So it
that
kind
just
of
happens to be artifacts on the back end, just due to the nature of how vehicles are.
Yeah, I kind of look at it as sort of like all rectangles are squares, but not all squares are rectangles. It's that kind of thing where like all vehicle decks are artifact decks, but not all artifact decks include vehicles in them. The same is true for treasures, where like all treasures decks are artifact decks. You are playing as much artifact synergy as you can in a treasures deck. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every time someone says, I'm sitting down at the table with my artifact deck, you can expect it to be a treasure deck. It's that sort of thing. So vehicles is my version of that. This Urza deck definitely plays into modular. It plays into affinity for artifacts, like creatures like Frogmite that have affinity for artifacts on them that become super cheap, super easy to play. That way you can continue to amass a board state. All of these 0/0 constructs that Urza makes become so much bigger, and then you just go to beat town with this. I don't think before writing all the notes for this episode, I would not have expected Urza to be the number one artifact deck, but it makes sense in kind of going through some of the more popular deck lists for it that he sits on the throne as the most popular.
I tell you what, you tell me off domes like, hey, go ahead. We're talking about our artifacts deck, and you say, oh, talk about the top commander of all time, and you tell me here that Urza is sitting at the top. It's not what I would have expected. I would have expected to open the thing and see Urza at the top. Urza, Lord High Artificer.
Yes, of course. Which he
welcome. That was the joke.
Yes, he's sitting at number 4 currently as the most popular. Although Urza, I hardly would call Urza an artifact deck. As somebody who's played both of these Urza decks at some point in my tenure with Commander, Urza is
hardly know her.
Yeah, Urza, and actually this kind of segues me into very nice, John. Thank you.
Sorry, continue.
Are you proud of that one?
Yes, I am actually. Okay.
Urza segues me into what I think is the next most popular artifact strategy, which is artifact combo. Like I said, there is 35 years worth of artifacts in the game, and they are bound to synergize to the point of infinity with each other at some point. So our number 2 commander here for artifact strategies is Brea Ethereum Shaper. Some people call her Bomberman. This is just a combo deck ticking time bomb that uses artifacts. Actually, Brea is kind of similar to Sai. Hear me out on this one. Because Brea enters the battlefield. It's a 4-color deck as well, which gives you options of just about as many things that synergize with artifacts as you could possibly ask for. I would say in order, it's like blue, then red, then black, then white, and green has very little artifact synergy in it, period. So you're not missing much by not playing green. This is functionally your 5-color artifact deck. You can throw in anything that you want to because you will likely need very little green if you're playing a 5-color artifact deck for this. Again, because your artifacts are things like signets and talismans that are fixing your mana while providing you synergy for what your deck is trying to do to win the game. Mm-hmm. So Brea is 4 mana. It's white, blue, black, and a red for a 4/4 human. It's shocking that she's a human, I must say.
Well, she is an artifact human as well. I don't know if you passed that part. She's a legendary artifact creature human.
It just feels weird when artifacts are humans. That's all I'm saying. And this is maybe me being a Blade Runner guy, but I like when my humans are humans and my artifacts are robots, okay?
If you're curious, her lore is that she originates from the shard of Esper, and then after the conflux brought all of Alara back together, she traveled to, I believe it was Jund, and found the means to create new Ethereum that Esper has not been able to make in centuries.
That's actually fascinating. I appreciate that lore dump. Thank you. When she enters the battlefield, she's a 4/4. Enters the battlefield, makes 2 1/1 blue Thopter artifacts. Important to note that.
Alara.
And then she has this ability of 2 generic mana, sacrifice 2 artifacts. Again, your artifact commanders are going to say artifact on them. That is the biggest giveaway of I'm playing an artifact deck. So she wants to sacrifice 2 artifacts to either deal 3 damage to target player or planeswalker, target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn, or you gain 5 life. Importantly, one of the artifacts that she can sacrifice is herself because she's an artifact. So the way this deck works is you use artifacts like, let's say we use an Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal in this deck. With all of your other mana rocks, a classic, use an Arcane Signet alongside that. You're now making infinite mana because you're casting and recasting Dramatic Reversal, which is untapping everything. You're netting infinite mana of any color. You can now cast and sacrifice Breya over and over and over to deal 3 damage to everybody infinitely, which will win you the game. So what I love about this juxtaposition between Urza and Breya is that you have sort of the 2 main categories, I would say, of artifact decks at your disposal. You've got Battle Cruiser, artifact creatures, and then you've got combo rocks just sitting right there. And anywhere in between those is the spectrum of what an artifact deck can be.
So that leads you then into this Kindred one we were talking about here, the Urtet Remnant of Memnarch. This is Mirrors is a longtime favorite like Kindred strategy or a creature type that fans really love as far as like the ones who are strictly artifacts. I guess pretty much your only other options outside of Mirror is stuff like you said, like Thopters. You've got like Constructs, Golems, I don't know, I guess, vehicles, I suppose, technically, even though vehicle isn't a creature type, but like, and then you start going into other colorless ones like Eldrazi, but that's a topic for another day.
Not talking about that today.
But so Urtet is whenever you cast a mirror spell, you make a 1/1 colorless mirror, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, you untap each mirror you control, and for a Wooburgen tap, you put 3 1/1 counters on each mirror you control. Activate only during your turn. It's everything you want to do. Mirror as a whole, I wouldn't call powerful, but it is very funny. Not. It's very funny to see this guy here in one of the top commanders because Mirror are beloved. They're just the helpful little trinket guys. They just love building stuff.
Yeah. Just like some nice little 1/1s. Do you remember my first artifact deck, John, that I ever built? Was the Reaper King 5-color mirror that used cards, especially at the time, like Conspiracy, to change their creature types from mirror to Scarecrow, which then made them all destroy permanents as they enter the battlefield with the Reaper King. That was my first love, I would say, of artifact decks came from the Reaper King. Also, an unbelievable artifact.
You won't hear me dunking on Mirror. I'm a long-time enjoyer of the Battle Ball. So, like, anytime you can get Mirror Battlesphere down in play, it's chef's kiss.
I completely agree. Mirror Battlesphere, I feel like, fits into basically every artifact strategy. Because not only is it unbelievable in this Battle Cruiser deck, like let's talk about with Urza here, our Chief Artificer. It would make Urza cost 5 less because it makes these 4 1/1 mirror as it enters. In the combo decks, it's just another out, but also gives you a ton of extra artifacts that you can sacrifice to things, even like an Ashnod's Altar. Like Ashnod's Altar, unbelievable artifact, really great in artifact strategies. Similar with like Krark Clan Ironworks. That's another like unbelievable like OG artifact combo engine is just second artifact, make 2 generic mana off of it. This is and then if you're playing like what I like to do with artifacts, which is reanimate them, this is kind of combining all of my loves in here, which sort of feels like a combo deck and sort of feels like a battle cruiser deck. That's sort of why I love Reanimator. It's an unbelievable Reanimator target because it just makes a board in a box. There's a ton of artifact reanimation and recursion in red, which is sort of where I lean with a lot of my artifact decks, is either in blue red or I really like being in Grixis for artifact decks. That's sort of my favorite little wedge of what artifacts can do is in those 3 colors, because you can fill your graveyard super easy, and then red gives you access to like Trash for Treasure or Goblin Welder. These are some of my favorite artifact cards. But I think I would be remiss if I did not include blue in most of my artifact decks as well, just to get so much card draw off. Thoughtcast being one of them. It is one of my favorite cards to throw in decks, period.
How about to that end, talking about as far as the artifact deck is concerned, because we have been talking about things like artifact creatures or whatever, what's your thoughts about artifact decks that are strictly colorless? Right? Like talking commander, something like Karn, Legacy Reforged, who like rewards you for having the highest mana value artifact down and then gives you mana at your upkeep to spend for artifacts. But if you play him as your commander, it has to be colorless. It's something we talked about a number of weeks back when I showcased the build of Iron Spider. I made that strictly all colorless. That was just artifact creature as a whole. When you do a colorless legendary creature, your deck has to be colorless. What do you feel about that?
I don't love colorless decks to begin with. I think that they masquerade as like, I'm gonna struggle this game, but it really is the most powerful lands that you could possibly play. Because like in most decks, okay, let me rephrase this. With colorless decks, you have to include lands that produce colorless. You can't include basic lands in it outside of wastes if you want to. But again,
or snow wastes
or snow covered wastes. But there is practically no reason to include those outside of like 2 or 3 in case you get Assassin's Trophied or something like that. Path to Exiles would still go and fetch something because you have a handful of wastes or snow-covered wastes in your deck. What I think that colorless artifact decks do really well is play 2 halves of a deck where you're playing this really powerful lands package because they're all utility lands. While also getting access to the best cards in the game. You've got Sol Ring is colorless. You've got your Thran Dynamo that's colorless. You've got Worn Power Stone. You're ramping really quickly into things like Mirror Battlesphere, into things like Blightsteel Colossus. Like, these are cards that are included in colored decks because they're so good, and you just get access to play those. The things you miss out on are like card draw. You miss out on interaction, really. But at the same time, like, you're the problem at the table. I've never sat down with a pot of 4 where the colorless deck is not the problem most of the time. And I don't know whether you feel that way or not.
No, I mean, that's just an inherent factor about playing it as is. Like I was talking about, colorless, you just care about a number. You don't need to worry about how much of a particular fixing you have, like barring like some weird corner case scenarios, right? All you care about is mana number go up and I cast a big thing. I suppose at the detriment of if the entirety of your deck is just strictly all artifact, colorless, whatever, things like the Vandal Blast probably hit you harder, I imagine.
Does hose you. Yes.
Double-edged sword on that. That I'm a colorless deck enjoyer. I don't currently have one in my repertoire right now, but it's always on the back burner. Something like I genuinely, I was talking about Karn Legacy Reforged. It is one that I've been wanting to build for a very long time. And actually, as a matter of fact, in my binder, I have the other creature Karn, the Urza's Saga one, the one that it gets a toughness boost when it blocks and turns a non-creature artifact into a creature. That one, the Silver Golem. I think it's called.
OG.
Yeah, OG. I built him at one point doing that thing of like forcing other people's lands to become artifacts and then turning them into creatures, and then they have to sacrifice them because they've got 0 power and toughness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Doing that kind of shenanigans, but running something like him at the helm, again, same thing. You're a colorless deck, so it's got pros and cons. You, like you had mentioned, you get to play and just be super proactive in some of those strongest colorless artifact cards the game has to offer, at the detriment of your game interaction is not super high and one big blowout, and that probably is the end of your game.
Yeah, this is something I shared on our Discord literally this morning, but this is my pile of my colorless deck that is slowly brewing For those listening on Spotify, this is a pile of about 40 cards that I've just had set aside of like, one day I'll build a colorless commander deck.
Give that a good riffle right in front of the mic right there.
I would. Act like I wouldn't. I'm not going to do it, but I would. Not betting on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that this is such a strange comment to say at this point, but I feel like colorless artifact decks are kind of boring to me, where I prefer seeing something that has some color in it, because that leans a strategy in a certain way, and it's not just like generic oops all good stuff. It almost is the 5-color problem. It's the same thing that colorless has, where 5 colors like oops all good stuff because you get access to all of the colors. Colorless is like oops all good stuff because you get access to all these really good lands and all the things that you're playing in a colored deck anyway. And you can turn your brain off while you're playing it. So I really like some of the more underrated commanders for some of these, which this is an excellent segue into like, what are some of our personal favorite artifact decks? For me, I talk about this deck quite a lot here on the show, in our Discord, so on and so forth. My Togo partnered with Casket deck is my artifact deck right now. This is a deck. Togo is a landfall, makes a rock, so it makes an artifact token, and then Casket can sacrifice 3 artifacts or creatures to functionally draw me 2 cards without actually drawing them. So this is what I would call my artifact deck, because it makes a ton of artifact tokens, which is something that I've really learned to love over the years, rather than leaning super hard into playing a bunch of artifact permanents. It really leans into, I'm going to play things that give me extra lands, which then make me extra artifacts. I'm trying to sit here with like 20 rocks on the battlefield and then do something cool with them. It is definitely an aristocrat's shell. So rather than being a battle cruiser deck, it leans more like you kind of turn that dial back to aristocrats, rather than being what are kind of my like monikers here. It is aristocrats rather than battle cruiser. It is combo instead of combat, and it's tokens instead of permanents. I think these are kind of the 3 switches that you can go between on artifact decks. So it's definitely like token aristocrat combo artifact deck. Whereas something like the Urza Chief Artificer is like permanents, battle cruiser, combat style artifact deck. So it is almost exactly opposite of what the Urza deck is trying to do. What I do find neat, though, is in Rakdos, most of the things that give me extra lands are artifacts as well. Crucible of Worlds is one of the best cards in that deck because it is a value artifact that then adds to my artifact counts for things like Imskir Iron Eater, which is also a really cool artifact. I was just about to mention,
he seems like an incredible artifact commander.
Yeah, well, it sort of is like, I could probably sub Imskir in as the commander if I really wanted to. He's one of the best cards in the deck. Imskir has affinity for artifacts, costs 8 mana, and then when he enters, you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is half the number of artifacts you control rounded down, and then you can pay 4, sack an artifact, and Imskir deals damage equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value to any target. So it allows you to like whip these artifacts around for damage while also refilling your hand. Yeah, this is sort of what my artifact deck is trying to do. And I've spent so long playing Grixis artifacts and playing mono blue artifacts with Urza or with Emery, Lurker of the Loch, those types of cards, that I wanted the challenge of, can I make an interesting artifact deck? And what I've found is that this is an artifact deck that is using a landfall engine to make artifact tokens. It's also just really good with treasures. It's really good with clues, because the whole point of the deck is to play Marionette Master. So every time you sacrifice an artifact, somebody's taking 4 damage off of it. So it is deeply, deeply an aristocrat's deck that is using artifacts as the value engine and the payoff for what it's trying to do. So I would highly recommend find something interesting like that to do. You said Sai is your artifact commander, which is also fascinating. What's some of the cool things that Sai does as an artifact commander?
Well, like I said, the deck is kind of blended together with pretty much every degenerate, stupid thing you could do as far as like the big beater artifact creatures, but then also leans into being like a combo shell because it can do like the infinite mana sort of thing. Like with it's obvious, it always comes down to Basalt Monolith. It always comes down to Basalt Monolith of like, can you reduce the cost of the ability to untap it? Or in the case of actually how that deck works, instead of reducing the cost on the activated ability for Basalt Monolith, all we simply do is just increase the amount of mana that Basalt Monolith makes. Again,
with something like Forsaken Monument.
Yeah, back to Forsaken Monument as an example, right? Because if Basalt Monolith produces more than the 3 that is required to untap it, then you're just net positiving right there, even without dropping the activated ability.
I'll talk about one of my favorite like sneaky plays with something like Forsaken Monument. Do you know that Forsaken Monument has a mana ability on it?
That you can tutor it out with Moonsilver Key.
You can tutor it out with Moonsilver Key. I literally helped somebody with this the other day. They had a Moonsilver Key in play, and they're like, man, I really wish I had something like bigger than just go and find a mana rock. And it's like, well, if you're playing Moonsilver Key in an artifact deck where you're making either tokens or permanents, go and get your Forsaken Monument, because that second ability counts as a mana ability. It's an unbelievable synergy that like you have to really know how the rules work for it to happen.
Yeah, no, that build, like I said, it's very, very combo heavy. But if I were to go like dial back into an artifact shell that was just playing fun artifacts for the sake of playing fun artifacts, I probably would be something like you that would play like a commander that has a variety of different colors added into it as well. You know, heck, you and I have both been on the receiving end of Leonardo da Vinci. That's a very fun and interesting idea for a commander for artifacts. Yeah,
Leonardo is a fascinating one to me. Let's sit on him and talk about it for a second, because it's he slots into what I'm really starting to love, which is I'm referring to as like a red herring commander, where all of the abilities are really good on Leonardo, and if you untap with him, you basically take over the game by playing out these things super cheap. Leonardo is 3 mana for a 3/3 human artificer. His second ability, I'll start there, which is, I wish that they had ordered these differently, because the first one makes no sense until you read the second one. So for 2 and a blue, you tap, draw a card, discard a card. If the discarded card was an artifact card, you exile it from your graveyard. You make an O2 Thopter with flying that's a copy of the thing that was discarded. So obviously you discard something like Portal to Phyrexia and you get the ETB from this massive thing, and it's an O2 Thopter. His second ability is 5 mana until end of turn. Thopters you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So as all these ETB, your Sandstone Oracles, whatever that you've flashed in with Leonardo to make these O2 Thopters, you've refilled your hand back to 7, you pay 5, they're all power and toughness 7/7, your Graz Unstoppable Juggernaut, like things like that just make things massive. You then have this team of beaters. So it, again, kind of rides this line between, is this a battlecruiser deck or is this a combo deck? You're trying to set up a like enabler and payoff engine while all of that is sitting on your commander. I call this a red herring commander, because if you spend your removal on Leonardo, you've now gotten too late into the game to where they can just start playing all of these things for their mana value, and you have no removal in hand anymore. So the puzzle of cards like Leonardo da Vinci, and I feel the same way about my Tanic Steadfast second deck, where it's like, go ahead, like shoot him down as many times as you want to, because that's less removal for the threats.
I'll continue to play this big dragon and the Eldrazi and World Quarter Dragon, whatever.
Yes. So Leo is really cool because he has natural Thopter synergy. So he kind of leans into the token strategy as well as being just playing really good artifacts to begin with. Like again, he's unbelievable with Mirror Battlesphere, because you make this O2 Mirror Battlesphere, you make 4 mirrors on top of it. It can attack, get +4/+4, and deal 4 damage to somebody on its own. Like it's one of the better cards in that deck. Just this fascinating sort of riding in between what the different artifact strategies can do.
It has been really cool to see that there have been some new types of like really unique shell as far as artifact things is concerned. One of the most, I mean, like we had Edge of Eternities not too terribly long ago. There's obviously a shell kicking around with like Regast of all like eating a bunch of artifacts, flinging them around as food or whatever. But the most interesting I'm seeing that's going to be coming up here real soon, I'm very curious to see people's artifacts lists with Toph, the first metal bender. I'm very excited to see what people are going to be brewing with this card. We are very surely going to be talking about a card like this in a few weeks when the Avatar previews start kicking off. But this has probably been the most, as far as like unique idea behind a commander, especially for artifacts, in quite a long while. And I'm very excited to see where people go with this in either combo shells or land centered things. But also, like, are you still going to focus in on the top part of the card herself that says that your non-token artifacts become lands, but they also still don't gain an ability to tap? So like, how do you monkey around with that? You know what I mean?
That breaks my brain. I can't quite figure out the total ramifications of making all of your artifacts into lands, even though they don't tap for mana.
You could do like artifact landfall. That would be a cool strategy. Right. Somebody should build a deck like that.
Yes, because what that does is, okay, John. Okay, I see what happened there. I see. Well, no, what this would do is, like, if you have something like Togo, does this not, it's non-token artifacts. Thank God. I was like, does this just go infinite with Togo? Like, you make a rock, it's a land. You make a rock, it's a land. No, but it's your non-token artifacts would provide landfall triggers for something like Togo, which would make a rock, which then
is a land.
Which is not a land because it's non-token. Again, it breaks my brain. This line of text, non-token artifacts you control are lands in addition to the other type, just completely breaks my brain, and I will find something cool to do with it. But yeah, at the beginning of your end step, Earthbend 2, which we now know means that target land you control becomes a 0/0 with haste. You put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. 2 is equal to whatever Earthbend N is. In this case, it's 2. And then when it dies or is exiled, return to the battlefield tapped. That alone, I think, is a cool thing, that you have natural recursion on your earthbended lands. The fact that you can earthbend, make a non-creature artifact into a 2/2 that you can then just sacrifice and immediately get its ETB back again, because it would just come back to the battlefield. Really, really sick. So I would expect to see Toph finding her way into the top artifact decks pretty shortly. Obviously, that card is not out yet.
If for nothing else, because it opens up into an artifact type of shell within a color set that we haven't really seen played out well for artifacts, right? You didn't even mention the fact that she's Naya to play. So we're talking Naya artifact, non-token landfall recursion combat man lands?
I'm in, dude. I'm in. I don't know, dude. I'm here for it. You get to play like Raga Draga with this. Like,
yeah, you do.
Like, you earthbend your lands into man lands. Now they get an additional +2/+2 from Raga Draga. Like, that's really sick. I'm a big fan. I'm sure I'll be putting together some list for that, for something that we're going to be doing for the Avatar set as it comes up and comes out. But it sort of brings up one of the last few things I want to talk about here, which is token strategies with artifacts. There's obviously, I mentioned it earlier, treasures have kind of become like a quote unquote problem in Commander, as they've just tacked make a treasure onto basically everything. Treasures, do you consider a treasure deck to be like a true artifact deck, or is it kind of its own thing now?
I suppose that depends. It's like, is the deck looking to make treasures as a means to like funnel into other cards that say you sacrifice an artifact into them, or when you sacrifice an artifact? Like, if the deck has other components that care about when those said treasures get either created or destroyed, then yeah, probably is an artifact deck. But if it's a treasure deck that is looking to just accelerate into mana really, really fast, then probably not. It probably isn't an artifact per se, you know?
Right. I think if you're looking to make a treasure deck and you want to make a cool, like, artifact centric treasure deck, you got to play Mr. House President and CEO. That has got to be the best one. This is a Mardu artifact creature from the Fallout set. It's an 0/4. Whenever you roll a 4 or higher on a die, you make a 3/3 colorless robot artifact creature token. And if you rolled a 6 or higher, instead create that token and a treasure token. And then for 4 mana, you can tap him to roll a 6-sided die, plus an additional 6-sided die for each mana from treasures spent to activate this ability. So you crack 4 treasures, you tap him, you get to roll 4 d6s, and then on anything that's a 4 or higher, you make a 3/3 robot, and anything that's on if you roll a 6, you get a 3/3 robot and a treasure. But the best thing is that Mr. House doesn't specify that if you roll a 6 or higher on a d6, you play all of the Dungeons and Dragons cards that make you roll d20s, so that it's really easy to roll a 6 or higher on it. It's an unbelievably cool deck. But there's also things like Coravolt is like an unbelievably strong commander, and
one of the original treasure commanders, I'd say.
I was going to say, like, an unbelievably strong commander with treasures, because what it's asking you to do is sacrifice permanents, and there's nothing better at doing that than treasures, because they're just lotus petals. Also, unbelievable card, unbelievable artifact, lotus petal. There's a reason it's $25, you know, if it's that cheap anymore. Maybe they're 40 now. I don't know.
Thanks, Popper.
Thanks, Popper. It actually was the commander ban of Mana Crypt that made the Lotus Petal so much more expensive, because it became one of the premier options for fast mana in CDH, a Lotus Petal, which you're already playing it anyway. But
nice.
And that, all of that aside, I would say the CDH has no artifact decks. It just has degeneracy going on. But man, you've even got things like Prosper Tomebound. There's one.
Dude, we've played against Roxanne. Roxanne is stupid with artifact tokens, you know?
Yes. Absolutely. One of my favorite treasure decks, which kind of is an artifact deck. It kind of leans more into just creature beatdown that uses treasures as an ability. This is Kalane Reclusive Painter. So for red and a black, I love some Rakdos artifacts. It's a 1/2 human elf bard that when he enters the battlefield, you create a treasure token, and then other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each mana from a treasure spent to cast them. So you're playing things like Goldspan Dragon with this, which is an unbelievable artifact engine in and of itself, because whenever it attacks or becomes targeted, you make a treasure, and then he makes treasures tap for 2. You just continue to do this. It actually works especially well with Kalane, because then your treasures tap for 2 mana, which means creatures that are cast with that mana enter with 2 +1/+1 counters on them. Kalane actually makes like an unbelievable modular commander. If you really want to go as like an artifact creature route, you're playing all of these things so modular was an old ability that they don't use anymore.
Yeah.
That is on artifact creatures that they're typically 0/0s. Enter with X amount of counters, whatever their modular ability is. And then when they die, you can move those counters onto another artifact creature. So what Kalane does as a payoff for that is it allows you, because you're playing treasures anyway, because you're playing artifacts, it's great synergy. As you're sacrificing your treasures to pay for your artifact creatures, they enter with a ton more counters, and then those counters stick around through the different modular abilities. So it's just a great way. Modular is probably my favorite of the like artifact beatdown strategies, because it's just so sticky. Like all of these counters just stick around, let alone if you have anything that like modifies counters as they move between permanents, and then it becomes like, oh, not only is this 6/6 throwing its counters, it's throwing all of its counters +1 or you know, whatever. Really, really cool ability on Kalane there.
Yeah, shout out to that and Zabaz the Glimmer Wasp. That's like he's your
That's
guy.
just the modular
He's
commander.
your guy to go to for modular. You know what I mean? We love the funny little bug.
Dude, also cool because like Boros artifact deck. I'm into that. If you don't have to sell me on a Boros commander deck. If you're doing something cool and it's in red white, I'm there for it. That is one of my favorite color combos that I cannot figure out how to make work. Since 2009, whatever. Like however long that Boros has been bad in Commander.
How about to bring us to a wrap up as a whole? What's your favorite artifact? Just that you would play regardless of your strategy. If it is an artifact themed shell, what's your pet card? What's your favorite pick?
I've been playing a lot more Inspiring Statuary these days. That is certainly one of my favorite artifacts to play, because Inspiring Statuary gives improvise to your non-artifact spells. So it kind of plays into the affinity range, where with treasures, you no longer have to sacrifice your treasures to pay for your non-artifact spells that are making you more treasures. So it's particularly good like in my Togo Casket deck, where my rocks can now essentially tap for mana. That's my favorite if you're doing like a hybrid artifact, non-artifact shell. My favorite artifact is still Ichor Wellspring. This is it just slots into almost every artifact strategy in some way. It's a cantrip because when it enters or leaves the battlefield or dies, hits the graveyard
or is put into the graveyard.
Yes, when it enters or is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, so dies, you draw a card from it. So this is a really great recursive piece with things like Goblin Welder is my favorite artifact synergy card. Being able to just swap an artifact from play and your graveyard, or forcing an opponent to do that, is so sick. It also is just, I've talked about this before, one of my favorite card designs is 1-mana creatures that require removal. I am obsessed with that design space, and Goblin Welder fits there perfectly, because otherwise I'm just going to keep on looping all of these things from my graveyard. Another one I've been playing a ton of lately is Clock of Omens. This is the one, it's a 4-mana artifact. You can tap 2 artifacts to untap another target artifact. So you can just kind of keep these chains going. I again, talking about my Togo Casket deck, I can loop that with Poo Poo UFO, which taps to put a land into play that then makes a rock, and then I can tap 2 rocks to untap Poo Poo UFO, tap it again, put another land into play. This goes infinite with a bounce land to be able to make infinite rocks and things. Clock of Omens just has such unbelievable synergy with it. Anything that untaps artifacts really just gets better the more activated abilities they put on artifacts. Ahem, the One Ring, where you can just tap an artifact to do something cool with it. Anything like a Voltaic Key or Clock of Omens, which is like Voltaic Key on crack cocaine. You can just go absolutely bananas with. How about yourself? What's your favorite artifact?
Oh, it's so funny that you go ahead and mention all of your stupid, like, the little intricacy pieces. Ooh, I bounce this thing in, I bounce this out, I make another treasure, I create a little bit of extra mana, my things can help me cast spells. I'm here for the big stupid You know. You know what I'm here for. One of my favorite artifact creatures of all time is Sphinx of the Steel Wind. It doesn't
remind me what this does.
It doesn't do anything combo centered, but he's just a big boy. He's 5 and Esper for a 6/6 artifact Sphinx with flying, first strike, vigilance, lifelink, and protection from red and green.
If this does not perfectly identify the difference between you and I talked again, like, to kind of recap, when you're building an artifact deck, the 3 kind of toggles that I switch between is, are you playing tokens or permanents? Are you playing aristocrats or battle cruiser? Are you playing combo or combat? I fall almost entirely on the left side, which is tokens, aristocrats, combo. You fall almost entirely on the right side, which is permanents, battle cruiser, combat. And me naming Inspiring Statuary as my favorite, you naming Sphinx of the Steel Wind as your favorite is so sick, dude.
I gotta tell you though, I'm also just a sucker for Darksteel Forge. I just don't.
That's the indestructible, right?
Yep, 9 mana, artifacts you control have indestructible. That's
beautiful.
It. That's all it does.
It's so beautiful. God, because then you just play board wipes and who cares, you know?
John is the artifact smooth brain of the community here. I just want to play my Darksteel Forge and play a battle ball and swing them all.
Yeah, dude. I absolutely love that. Is that what's your favorite way to like win with an artifact deck?
Oh, either smashing in for a whole bunch of combat damage. Like I've gotten wins with stuff like Blightsteel Colossus before. It works.
True.
It just works, you know, or like taking the artifacts and flinging them for damage off of some effect like that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Thopters off of Psy or whatever against Sphinx of the Steel Wind was an icon of my old school build of something like Aloro, for example, because it was in the Esper colors. I had him in there as just hey, he's got lifelink, so haha, he goes into the lifelink deck. But it just beating in face with a colorless card, just playing the big stupid colorless thing while everybody else is doing the little intricacies of their spell slingers, their little elves, or their whatevers they're making. Yeah, no, big dumb Sphinx. It's now indestructible. Go.
To wrap up, one of my favorite artifact creatures that leans in your direction is Steel Hellkite. I know that it's a boomer EDH card for sure. Do you still like Steel Hellkite at all? They still include it in most artifact precons.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately find myself removing it quite a bit. But are you still on the Steel Hellkite hype train, or are you removing it from decks now as well?
I think I still have one inside, I want to say, just because it sometimes is useful to have that ability to remove some permanents from the board that, especially within a monocolor, you could have issues removing.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Probably not all artifact decks anymore. We probably have some better tools to use now. But say, if you're a monocolor or less than, I'd say, if you are playing the colorless one, he's probably an auto include still.
Yeah. That makes sense. Especially if you're in colorless. There's just so few ways outside of the Ugins to do this ability and take care of troublesome permanents, like you were saying. So having a Steel Hellkite, even though it ends up being 12 mana to destroy what you want to do, again, you're in a ramp deck. Most artifact decks really are ramp decks with some flavor behind them. So I think Steel Hellkite still is totally fine in those decks, especially if you're playing the Regalia or something. Dang, dude. That's the colorless deck that I really want to build, is the Regalia. Do you think people should play more artifact decks, John?
Absolutely. I think you had mentioned, I think everybody needs to have an artifact deck under their belt at some capacity. You get a sense of freedom of being able to include into your strategy probably some of the most unique and personalized cards of your favorites without much of the restriction of that other colored spells would require of you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think with that brings us to the end of today's MTG Thoughtcast episode. Thanks for sticking with us here. This was a fun one to go through. I love talking about some tchotchkes. If you want to join in all the discussion, as I said in the intro, you should join our Discord. It's where we're talking about good artifacts all the time. While you're down there, if you've made it this far, you should subscribe. You should be here for more of this. You obviously are into this. You've made it this far. Go ahead and subscribe. You should even turn the bell on. I don't even tell people to do that very often, but turn the bell on, get those notifications going, and comment.
Get us to 1,500 by Christmas. That would be so good.
We'll certainly get there by Christmas. We'll probably be there by the time this episode comes out. If you want to reach out to us, quick way to do that is by commenting on the video. So you can do that. Our Discord is the next easiest way because we're hanging out there all the time. If you want to reach out to us on social media, you can find us on Blue Sky. That is at MTG Thoughtcast, at Joseph-Thoughtcast, or at John-Thoughtcast. You can also email us at mtgthoughtcast@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening to some homies here talking about some artifacts, and we will see you so soon back here on the MTG Thoughtcast. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you.